Welcome to Conversations on the Coast, San Francisco's premier author interview program. Today's book has a very interesting title and subtitle. It's called Putins Labyrinth. And the subtitle is Spies, Murder, and the Dark Heart of the New Russia. The author is Steve LeVine. It's published by Random House. Thanks for stopping by.
Glad to be here, Jim.
You know, in many ways, your book blew me away. I mean, part of it was from my total ignorance of what the heck is going on in Russia now and what's been going on in the last several years. Another part of it was the power of your insights into what's going on, how you take us in an almost personal way into what's been happening on what you might call the violent side of Russia. But even beyond that, you do something for us that I think is very important. You set what's going on today in Russia in its historic context. You take us all the way back to Ivan the Terrible, for example. Like the Russians can't get out of this mode.
Right. My turn to speak.
Sure.
Okay, Jim, that's exactly the idea of the book. It's the idea of the title. Putins Labyrinth. What is the labyrinth? That's the Russian continuum, and it's that what we're seeing right now, the string of murders, the story of the 7 people and the 6 who die. This is the story of Russia going back at least 500 years and probably more.
And continuing something that you call somewhere in the book, I think, fear-based rule. And you also comment, and you don't know why, it seems to me. You bring this up several times. You're at a loss to understand why they hang on, why they're kind of attracted to that type of rule, fear-based.
One would imagine, I understand, having lived out there a long time, that inertia is a very powerful physical force.
Yeah. But
being thinking people, you can change. You can change a country. Look at Germany. Look at South Korea, for example. So one wonders why do they choose to live in a way in which the state is it's a medieval frame of mind, that the state is almost everything, and the people have this tiny space in which really your right to live or die is decided by somebody else.
Yeah, it's all from up above somehow. Even in a period when Mr. Yeltsin was in charge, and the killing, if you will, was not coming from above, it still wasn't comfortable to be there because the gangs took over. The gangs took care of eliminating people that should be eliminated. And that's why I think Putin got in. I mean, I think people were looking for a strongman.
Oh, that's for sure. It's a feeling that somebody is in charge and somebody's taking care of the big decisions. But more so once he was in power, and really the Russians are agreeable to, they sort of go along as long as they can do what they want to do, earn a living. But then he went on to demonstrate something that the Russians hadn't seen for a very long time, really since the Stalin era. Mm-hmm. And that's somebody who was really strong, not afraid to use power, not afraid to kill. And that's something that Russians respect. And after this debilitating and humiliating Yeltsin period of being on your knees as a country,
yes,
being prostrate, really, prostrate, Putin got Russia on its feet and made Russians proud to be Russians again. And one equates it with Reagan's mourning in America. It was mourning in Russia.
Mourning in Russia. The book, though, as you say at the end of the introduction now, focuses on the present. The present. This book, you write, is a chronicle of violence in modern-day Russia, a place that seems unwilling or unable to escape its horrific past, as we were just saying. My goal was to tell the story of some of the most prominent victims, people who are remembered largely for what they endured and how they died. I saw it through the eyes of their friends, family, and colleagues, in addition to the victims' own writings and private and public utterances, to write a more complete portrait of their lives. Many survivors recounted their own ordeals. The shared testimony paints a disturbing picture of assassination and other brutality and leaves the unmistakable impression that the Russia under Putin is at least partly responsible. So that's the essence of the book. And when we come back, we're going to find out how the man from nowhere took all this power to himself.
You're listening to Conversations on the Coast with Jim Foster. Now you can find this program on iTunes, SoundCloud, and all your favorite digital outlets. Follow the show on Twitter at JimFosterCoc and email jimfostercoc@gmail.com.
Putins Labyrinth, the title of the book, the subtitle, Spies, Murder, and the Dark Heart of the New Russia. Author Steve LeVine is here talking to us. And at one point in the book, you say Putin is the man from nowhere. And how the devil did he get somewhere? I mean, one of the ways he got there was through, I think, the inefficiencies and the plottingness, if you will, of Yeltsin. And by contrast, whatever he was doing looked terrific. Is that a possible scenario?
You've put your finger on it. Is that against the backdrop of the haplessness, the indecisiveness, and blundering of the Yeltsin administration, and really broadening out into the republics, there was chaos. This KGB trained man who had a not a spectacular KGB career.
No, there's a great line in the book where you say at age 38 he was deemed a failure. That's the KGB guy.
Well, that's right. That's right.
And now we're looking at him because of Yeltsin and because of events that are happening, the blowing up of those 4 big apartment houses, the events in breakaway Chechnya, and more, they I guess people felt they needed somebody strong.
They needed somebody strong, but what did Yeltsin need? How did this man from nowhere end up in the Kremlin? And 2 things. One, it was recognized that he was a loyalist. Mm-hmm. Yeltsin was in big trouble at that point. He was very ill, and the people who relied on him, oligarchs, billionaire businessmen, and bureaucrats who relied on Yeltsin for their power, were afraid of losing it if Yeltsin died. And Yeltsin was under investigation in Switzerland for stealing money from the government. And who was going to secure the power of these various groups, and who was going to make sure that Yeltsin could live out the rest of his years in peace
and not be murdered?
Right. Yes, prosecuted, and he was brought in for those reasons. And the final thing that was recognized was that it was recognized that he knew how to exercise power and wasn't afraid to. And so these 3 elements qualified him, it was thought, to be the president. And in fact, I mean, one wouldn't imagine that someone who was only a lieutenant colonel in the KGB, but he has exercised power.
He's done very well.
Yeah.
I mean, he started out in his first run for the presidency. He got 52.6% of the vote.
Right, but his popularity started out at 2%. It grew to 52% after the Chechen War, when he was seen as this very powerful and decisive figure.
Oh my gosh! Putin maintained no torture or execution chambers, however, you say. Yet his matter-of-fact responses to the domestic assassinations that occurred with some regularity invited the impression the impression abroad that he was cold-blooded and at a minimum a protector of murderers. This is our new president in Russia, the protector of murderers?
Well, the right at that right now he's the prime minister.
Yeah, well, I'm going back to when
then.
He started.
Yeah, he has not at minimum he's not tried to dissuade anybody from the impression that he's a murderer or harborer of murderers, and at worst, he gave the signal that one or more of the victims could be killed.
And they were killed.
And they were killed.
A lot of them.
Yeah.
A lot of them. Consider October 2006. A killer fired 4 shots into Anna Politkovskaya, killing the journalist in her apartment. The elevator door opened and she took 4 right there. And 3 days later, gunmen killed banker Alexander Plokhin, head of a Moscow branch of an important bank, which I will not try to pronounce. Days after that, the victim was Anatoly Voronin, business director of the Etat TASS news agency. Finally, a lone assailant used a Kalashnikov silencer to execute Dmitry Fotyanov, a mayoral candidate in the mining town of Dalnogorsk. None of the murders was solved. That's the way he did things, or allowed them to be done.
Exactly. In Russia, there's a rule of impunity for killers.
The most famous of the murders with which Putin can be said to be involved, of course, is Alexander Litvinenko. And we're going to talk about that case when we come back.
You're listening to Conversations on the Coast with Jim Foster. Now you can find this program on iTunes, SoundCloud, and all your favorite digital outlets. Follow the show on Twitter at JimFosterCoc and email JimFosterCoc@gmail.com.
This is Jim Foster. It's Conversations on the Coast, Putins Labyrinth, Spies, Murder in the Dark Heart of the New Russia by Steve LeVine. That's the book we're talking about. And Steve, before we get to Alexander Litvinenko, I need to talk about Anna. The reason I want to talk about Anna is that in reading between the lines of what you write about her, I picked up feeling there that you feel very deeply about what happened to her and you're angry about it. Am I reading too much into this?
No, no. I think that most of the characters I found to be ordinary people who got caught up in events larger than themselves, and
also in describing their situations, you're terribly objective, and there's a lot of on the one hand and on the other, and okay, it seems that way, but it's probably not. But when it comes to Anna, she comes off as a hero, I think.
I think she is a hero. She's the one hero in the book, and I never met her, but I feel like I know her, and I think that she was an incredible journalist, courageous, with an ethic and a magnitude that was enormous, and she made an incredible impact on people's lives. When you hear people who knew her and the people she helped and reported on talk about her, you can see what an authentic person she was.
When it comes to responsibility, it's in her case that I think you make your strongest statement. What about Putin? Did he order Anna's murder? I've not heard anyone present a credible case against the Russian president. That later on, you write, Putin is responsible. Because as with Nordost and Paul Klebnikov's murder, he created the climate of impunity in which someone decided that Anna could die. Putin's rule protects those who are inside the system or at least accept it. Outsiders cannot expect the same protection. And boy, she put herself outside. And boy,
she knew
she wrote about Putin.
Yeah, she was his most acid critic, and she knew she was going to die. And she told people that she was going to die, and she was preparing for that day, which of course didn't reduce the shock when that happened.
Alexander Litvinenko. He's the most famous of the people that you write about. He's the one who was murdered, assassinated with the use of a isotope.
Nuclear isotope.
Nuclear isotope. What a wonderful way to die. And he was, again, a fierce critic of Putin. But here you say, and he could have been a little off. He could have been a little crazy. Whereas with Anna, you don't make that kind of judgment. Why do you see so much complexity in Litvinenko's situation?
Litvinenko was a former KGB agent.
Right.
It's not clear what he served in Chechnya. It's not clear what he was doing down there. It's not clear his relationship with Boris Berezovsky, the oligarch, the billionaire oligarch, who has a very controversial background, how he amassed all that wealth. And Litvinenko, why he attached himself to this person and became a protector of his, the kind of charges that he leveled against Putin, that he was a pedophile. Now, this is a absolutely absurd charge. And so, and his friendships, he didn't have any friendships. He had his wife and he had his child. And
everybody else, it seems to me, by your accounting at least, he was trying to make money on, one way or another. He wanted them to help him, have a career in espionage or something like that. Even though the very rich banker was keeping him, so to speak.
Right. So he had that dimension to himself, and then he also, remember, Yuri Felshtinsky, his co-author in Blowing Up Russia, said that Alexander saw people either one or two ways. Either it was someone he was operating against as an operative, or somebody from whom he wanted information.
Kind of like still being KGB, huh?
Exactly.
You can't get that ethos out of you, apparently.
Very similar to Putin.
Yeah. So he goes into this hotel and he gets poisoned there. This started on November the 1st. He dies on November the 23rd. And that's, what happens to him. And I think he died, except by his family, probably not mourned.
Exactly.
Well, we're going to mourn the end of this program, but you can continue the whole experience of this book by doing something very simple, going out and buying it. It is a terrific book. It's beautifully written, and it'll take you someplace you've never been, to Putins Labyrinth. Steve LeVine's the author. This has been Conversations on the Coast, and I'm Jim Foster.
Now you can find this program on iTunes, SoundCloud, and all your favorite digital outlets. Follow the show on Twitter at JimFosterCoc and email JimFosterCoc@gmail.com.